Congratulations.
Thanks.
This is exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting.
I like that you were an overachiever in your first project. You went director, writer, and actor. It's like, get it all done.
Well, I mean, if you want something done right, I mean, that wasn't it at all. I really just, that's sort of how it came out. I wrote it, and then, I realized that no one else was probably going to direct it, so I thought I'd just do that. And then somebody pulled out at the last minute as an actor, so then I stepped into that. It all just it was never really the plan, it all just sort of fell that way.
Super organically, I like that.
Yeah.
And you've been working on this for 6.5 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, God, it's been 8 years now, really, since I wrote the first draft. But yeah, we started shooting 6.5 years after the first draft.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a long time to get financing.
I love kind of the story because I feel like we live in a society where everybody is obviously taking part in sex, but they don't necessarily want to talk about it. And you did it in a way that was really fun. Like, I love that you get shock value. I love that you get emotionally attached, and I love that you get really funny moments as well.
Yeah, which I think is truthful when you're talking about sex in general, because it can be all of those things. And so if it was, for me, if I'd made it any darker than that, it would have been inauthentic to my experiences with sex and relationships and my partners, So it felt truthful, Often I laugh a lot with the people I'm with, and it, often out of discomfort or awkwardness and all of that. We all do, And so that's sort of what I tried to capture on screen a little bit, and try to give the audience a sense of that sort of titillation that we get when we bring up the word sex and anything to do with sex. So I love watching the audience's reaction, because as the film starts, everyone's like, what is this? And then within a few minutes, they're like, okay, all right, we're all on board here. This is, I think I understand. And then the wave picks them up and off they go.
I love those moments when you're sitting there and you're like, oh no, they're not going to do that.
Right.
Oh no, yes they are. And you just can't help but laugh, because the lengths people will go to get what they want, especially when it has to do with like their own feelings, will blow you away.
Right, and it's not only just to get what they want, but sometimes to hide who they are. And that's another element of the story. It's like, absolutely, that's why it's called the little death. The French word for, the French slang for orgasm is because it's like, how far will people go to get the perfect orgasm, to get that moment of bliss? And then how far will people go to hide the person they are who wants that moment of bliss, And they go like, I'm into this, but I'm afraid my partner's going to judge me, and I'm afraid they're going to not love me anymore. So maybe I'll just tell a few little white lies and sidestep that conversation, because that conversation makes me uncomfortable. And then, of course, that's where things start to unravel. But then, Paul and Maeve's story, the one I'm in, that's not the conflict. The conflict is not how do I tell my partner, because that happens straight away. But the conflict then is, how do I satisfy my partner who has a fetish that I'm not into? And things can unravel that way. So there are lots of ways into each story that I could, I could find comic value and drama and danger and surprise. So yeah, it was a really fun script to write.
What drew you to writing a script about this? What was it that you said to yourself, like, I have to make this. This is going to be so much fun? Yeah,
well, maybe for a couple of reasons. I mean, one was that I just feel like this subject is so universal, because it's so human. Who does it? Who can't relate to being in love or wanting to be in love, or having a relationship that's a bit complicated, and having sex or wanting sex? It's sort of everyone on earth, because that's just in our makeup. And then I was like, well, I hadn't really seen those things done in the way that I would do them, and that's always a great place to start as a writer, as a filmmaker. If you feel like there's a gap that hasn't been filled, and a little bit out of frustration, where I kept seeing sex comedies going, shit, I wouldn't do it that way. That's just not I'd do it this way. And then, 100 pages later, you're like, oh, I guess that's what I'd do. And if anyone is with me, we can do it, we can make it. So that is sort of it. It was really as much out of frustration with films that were doing similar things, but not in the way that I would do them. And I was so certain that people would connect to it, because, well, yeah, there's such a unifying qualities or elements to the film. I knew that if I did it right, that it would find an audience.
Yeah. What made you choose kind of each couple's thing? Like there was the obsession with the sleeping person. Like what made you choose each one of those? Because they're all so interesting, and some of them you don't even know exist.
Right, I didn't until I looked them up, and but yeah, so I'd probably pick the fetish first, and then started imagining what it would be like to have that fetish, and what would be some of the potential hazards and obstacles that you would have to negotiate through if you had that fetish. And then once I found the story, I would then start building characters around that story that would add conflict to the story. So, you know, and that's sort of how I built them up. I built, you know, because the scripts come together piece by piece, really. And so it was like, start with the fetish, and then you add the story, and then the characters, and then I added the next element of how do I meld these worlds together to create one unifying body. And yeah, that's sort of how it all happened. And Steve came in towards the end, the character of Steve, the sex offender, because I needed a belt.
Those cookies.
To winch them together. And so yeah, that's sort of how it all came.
With the characters, you can tell you put so much work in the character development, because you do not only relate to these characters that at first glance you look at them and you'd say I'd be nothing like them, and then all of a sudden as the story unfolds you're like, oh wow, maybe I am like them.
Yeah.
So, and I know that you talked about in the production notes that casting was a little bit more difficult on this. So can you tell me about the casting process?
I mean, I'd heard long ago from filmmakers that they go, directing is 90% casting, and I mean, look, that's an unquantifiable thing. It's hard to know if it is exactly 90%, but I totally know what they're saying, because if you cast it right, you can let go of the wheel a little bit, and you really can let the actors bring that final element to the character, which is something that you can't do. You can't put it all on the page. At some point, you have to kind of go, do you know what I mean? Great, make it so, make it happen. So there were, we spent a long time. Nikki Barrett is one of my favourite casting directors in Australia, and she and I worked really heavily, for a long period of time, trying to find the right actors for it. And we had amazing actors coming in, doing great auditions, but just not quite right. And honestly, each person who got cast, I knew within 5 seconds. You could just tell. I was like, that's it. That's the world. You've gotten the world. You've gotten not only the character, but you've also gotten, maybe by accident, the world of this film. And that was super important, because one wrong performance would have taken people out of the world of the film. Once they're out, it's really tough to bring them back in. So it was really important that all the actors were on the same page and in the same film and telling the same, theme. So yeah, definitely it was a long, arduous battle, but ultimately everything worked out for the best.
And you guys worked pretty well together. I know that you said that you guys were like changing scripts the day of, which I love, because I think that so many directors get so married to their script and so married to their project, and you really kind of let them work with you on changing some of that.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, you have to, I think, because I say that if there's a line that you love, but an actor just can't say it the way you want it, well, don't force that actor to say it, because then you both lose. There's no point in having a great line in the mouth of an actor who can't sell it. So why don't you compromise, find something that, and that was what the experience was finding compromise. And also, I'll take full responsibility. After shooting a scene, I'd go, that just didn't work. And it wasn't the actor's fault, and it wasn't the crew's fault. It was the script fault, and that was mine. I own that. But I thought it would work. I understand why now, having shot it, why it doesn't. And I would go home that night and write a new scene, knowing that wouldn't be in the film. And I don't think I was ever wrong. I followed my instinct pretty much. I'm trying to think of an instance where I thought it wouldn't make the film and it did. I don't think anything. I knew in the day if it wasn't going to make the film, and ultimately it never did. So I would add a new scene going, I know what the problem is. I know how to link these two scenes together now that this scene's not in. And I would say to my AD, I'd go, Scott Lovelock, I'd say, look, Scott, I know we have no room in the schedule, I get it. But you just need to give me 45 minutes with these two actors, and I can film this super quick. Because I know that scene that we shot yesterday, that scene we spent 4 hours on? Right, that's not going to be in the film. I'm so sorry. So it was a constant process of allowing the film to evolve as we were making it. And that was part of the stress and fun at the same time. It was certainly nerve-wracking. I don't remember sleeping much in the 3 weeks that we shot.
You shot this in 3 weeks?
19 days.
Wow! That's a really short schedule. And it came out amazing. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I loved is, and I think very few films have done it well, and I think one of my favorite films that did it really well was Crash, where you have all these different storylines and everything's going on at the same time, and then all of a sudden they're very tied together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that you did that really well.
Yeah,
and it was really fun to watch. Did it always start off that way, that you always wanted them to be, together in the end, or did you start off with them as very separate stories?
I mean, probably in the very first draft it was more separate, but knowing that the first draft was not the last draft, I don't think there was ever a moment where I was like, no, that's it. They're never going to be connected. I think I probably wrote the first draft with it not being connected, going, just let me do one more pass and I can find a way to, because I knew that. And by the way, I think I ultimately did 30 different passes on the film as over the years of development. So, lesson to writers: know that the first draft is not your last draft, unless you're a genius, which I'm not. So, but to answer your question, I had written them individually and found the ways to mesh them together, to meld them together later. So.
What was the biggest challenge you faced at being director of this, seeing that it was your first kind of big project and you did have such a short production schedule?
I mean, what wasn't a challenge? It was all a challenge. Well, maybe it was letting go of things. That was probably tough, because I'd shot the film in my head over 6.5 years 1 million times. And so when you get to it, it's like, well, we need this. And then we can't afford that, so that needs to go. So that was always hard, but necessity breeds invention if you're really clever and you've got a good team to help you see outside your limited vision. And I had a great crew, and they were able to help me. And I'd say to Chappie, for instance, my cinematographer, I go, Chappie, but I want this shot, and they're telling me I can't have it. And he'd go, well, let's spitball. Let's figure out a way to get what you want without that shot. And then we'd figure out a way. And I go, you know what? That's a great compromise. And that would happen across the board. Xanthi Highfield, my production designer, I want this, can't get it. Okay, well, meet me in the middle. So that was certainly a valuable lesson to learn. I probably wouldn't hang on to so many things in future. But you got to fight for things as well at the same time. You got to know, because if you do nothing but compromise, well then your film won't look anything like the thing you wrote, and that might be a shame.
Yeah, it becomes not your project anymore almost.
Yeah, so you need to know when to hold them, know when to fold.
Do you think it'll change the way you are in front of the camera now, having directed a cast?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just knowing, you know what? There's this great thing that actors do. It's so interesting, and I did it for a while, where the director would say, we got it. And the actor would go, one more for me. And the directors always, because they're nice, go, sure, one more for you. As a director, I will go, I remember so many times, I go, one more for me, please. I go, yeah, of course, if you feel like you want it. But in my head, I'm going, we've got it. I don't know what you are chasing, but trust me, I wouldn't move on if we didn't have it. So I probably, if a director told me we got it, I would just say, up to you. I probably wouldn't fight for another take, because I know how frustrating that can be sometimes as a director going, one more? Yep, definitely. If you think you need it, let's do it.
That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, actors are delicate creatures. You have to handle them.
They are. I think that people are really going to appreciate this film and have a lot of fun with it. What do you hope the audience thinks of it when they see it, or what's your favorite reaction maybe when you view it with an audience?
Oh, I mean, yeah, people tend to get pretty excited at the end of the film. The Q&As that I've done at the festivals have been pretty spirited, which because it ends on such an upbeat, and I love that. But I always said, and I continue to believe this, that the best thing that I can hope out of it is that if a couple is watching it on their way home, they say to each other, well, what are you into? I mean, you can tell me. And I hope, you know what, if the film inspires even one couple to have better sex and you know, a better intimacy, then my work here is done. That would be an amazing thing, to be able to gift someone that, just that conversation that they might have been previously too frightened to have.
Yeah, it certainly starts conversations. And at the end, you're left and you're like, well, but what happens?
Right.
Does she meet the guy from the call? I mean, it's so...
But you know what? Everyone asks me that, and then I say to them, and I say to you, what do you think? Right? Do you think they meet?
No.
You don't think they meet? That's so interesting. See, I do.
I think I'm a cynic, though.
Right?
I think I've seen one too many.
That's so interesting, because I think
Yeah.
they do, because I would go, the logic of it is, well, he's got her number.
Mm-hmm.
He can just call back. And I think, I mean, but that's what I love about not answering that question.
Yeah.
Is that we experience two different films, and that's an amazing thing. You know.
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you so much for sitting with me. It was such a fun film to watch,
I'm so
for
happy.
sure. And I did the same thing, like you said. I sat down and I was like, "Oh, what am I getting into?" And like my neighbor was walking by and they were looking in, and I was like, "No, but it's so much fun." And then at the end, I was just like, "Holy shit!" It was really fun to watch.
So happy you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much
You're so
for
welcome.
chatting with me.
No, my pleasure. Absolutely.